I want to pick the whole thing up and just buy the whole shop and move it.
For a price?
To millions, he's the rock star of the antiques world, a charismatic treasure hunter with an almost supernatural gift for spotting diamonds in the rough. Drew Pritchard, the face of the global hit Salvage Hunters, built an empire turning other people's junk into gold. His life looked like a perfectly restored masterpiece, admired by fans in over 50 countries. But behind that polished veneer of success, a devastating secret was eating away at him. It's a story of betrayal, public humiliation, and a violent clash that would shatter his carefully crafted world and leave his family in ruins. This isn't the story of the treasures he found, this is the story of everything he lost. Before the scandal, the name Drew Pritchard meant success, passion, and an almost magical ability to see the soul in forgotten objects. Born in 1970 in the historic town of Conwy, North Wales, his obsession with the past started early. While other kids were playing with toys, a young Drew was out scouring fields and beaches with his friend, and future salvage hunter's sidekick, John T., searching for discarded treasures like old bottles and car badges. It was a humble start, a boyhood fascination that held the seeds of a multi-million-dollar empire. He left school at 16 with no qualifications, a fact that makes his later success seem even more incredible. He wasn't a scholar in the traditional sense, his education came from the grime of scrapyards and the dust of forgotten attics. He trained as a professional joiner, perfecting his craft and learning the language of wood, metal, and stone. By 1994, he'd founded Drew Pritchard Architectural Antiques, and his reputation as a junkyard genius started to take off, but it was 2011 when Drew Pritchard truly became a household name. The premiere of Salvage Hunters was a game-changer. The show's premise was simple but incredibly addictive. Follow Drew as he travels the UK, hunting for antiques in the most unlikely places, country estates, crumbling factories, and cluttered barns. And people were captivated. They weren't just watching a guy buy and sell old stuff, they were watching an artist at work. Drew's mantra, "buy the best you can afford," resonated with millions. His on-screen persona was a massive part of the appeal. Dressed in his trademark glasses and casual gear, he had a no-nonsense, straight-talking style, but his passion for the objects he found was contagious. He could walk into a room overflowing with junk and, within seconds, spot the one piece worth a fortune. His encyclopedic knowledge of design, from Gothic revival to 20th century modernism, was something he shared with an enthusiasm you couldn't help but catch. The show blew up, becoming a global phenomenon that pulled in a staggering 22 million viewers in 52 countries and turned Drew into an international celebrity. His client list was a who's who of the rich and famous, including fashion designer Ralph Lauren and celebrity chef Marco Pierre White. The success of Salvage Hunters wasn't a one-man show. It was built on a team that felt more like a family. You had his childhood friend and driver, John T., whose dry wit was the perfect counterpoint to Drew's intense focus. And then there was Rebecca Pritchard, Drew's wife. Their partnership was central to the show's story and its success. While Drew was out on the road, Rebecca was the anchor, running the business from their Conwy showroom, managing restorations, and giving crucial historical and commercial context to his finds. She was a respected antiques expert herself, with a background in fashion and property, and her on-screen analysis was a fan favorite. Together, they were a powerhouse, the golden couple of the antiques world. To the public, they looked like a united front, the perfect partnership in both business and life. They lived in a stunningly restored Methodist chapel in the Welsh countryside, a home that was a testament to their shared passion. It was filled with quirky, magnificent finds, a palace of treasures that embodied the salvage hunter's dream. They had 2 children, a son named Tom and a daughter named Grace, and projected the image of a happy, thriving family at the top of their game. The show was a hit, the business was booming, and their brand was flawless. It was a golden era, a picture of perfection. But as the world would soon find out, the most beautiful facades can hide the deepest cracks. And Drew Pritchard's carefully restored life was about to be smashed to pieces. The marriage of Drew and Rebecca Pritchard was, for all intents and purposes, the heart of the salvage hunters brand. Their story was a great one. They met in the early 2000s, bonding over a shared, all-consuming passion for history and restoration. Rebecca, with her deep experience in property development and the antiques trade, wasn't just a supportive wife, she was a vital collaborator. Their professional partnership blossomed into a romance, and their marriage seemed like the perfect blend of their personal and professional lives. For years, they worked side by side, building their business from a local Welsh antique shop into an international brand. On camera, their dynamic was a masterclass in collaboration. Rebecca was the calm, analytical force to Drew's impulsive, treasure-hunting energy. When Drew would call her, buzzing about a new find, her measured response and expert evaluation grounded the show. She was the one who figured out the restoration work, calculated the potential profit, and gave the final say. This partnership gave the show its credibility, and its soul. Fans didn't just admire them as individuals, they admired them as a unit. They were the ultimate power couple, living the dream so many of their viewers shared, turning a passion into a career, right alongside the person they loved. Their public image was one of unbreakable unity. Drew and Rebecca Pritchard were a team, a family, an institution, but behind this perfect picture, a much darker story was playing out, far away from the TV cameras. The first public sign that something was seriously wrong exploded in 2017, but the trouble had started years before. When the scandal broke, it wasn't just a rumor, it was a sordid, detailed account of infidelity. Drew had been having an affair with a woman named Amanda Thomas, the wife of a prominent local businessman, Janice Bryn Thomas. What made the betrayal even more vicious was that Drew and Janice Thomas had reportedly been friends. The affair wasn't a one-time mistake, it had allegedly been going on for 2 years while Drew was still married to Rebecca. How was it discovered? Just like a plot from a TV drama. It wasn't a confession or a quiet separation. Instead, Amanda's husband uncovered a series of incriminating text messages and call logs. The betrayal was absolute, a secret life running parallel to the public one that millions of fans looked up to. While Drew was on television charming his way into cluttered barns and talking about the beauty of history, he was simultaneously deceiving his wife, his family, and a man he called a friend. The pressure of that double life must have been immense. Filming Salvage Hunters was already intense, keeping Drew on the road for most of the year. That schedule was often blamed for putting a strain on his marriage, but the affair introduced a level of deceit that would prove catastrophic. He was living a lie, and the facade of the perfect family man, the devoted husband and business partner, was about to be torn down violently. The revelation of the affair was only the beginning. The situation was a ticking time bomb, and the fuse was lit. News started to trickle through their small Welsh community, a place where everyone knows everyone and secrets are tough to keep. The private betrayal was about to become a very public humiliation, setting the stage for a confrontation that would escalate from whispers to front-page news. The perfect facade was crumbling, and the first cracks were about to give way to a full-blown earthquake. The simmering tension between Drew Pritchard and Janice Thomas was bound to boil over. It wasn't a question of if, but when. The explosion happened at the Liverpool Arms pub in Conwy, a local spot that would soon become the scene of a brawl that cemented Drew's fall from grace. In July 2017, months after Janice Thomas had discovered the affair, the two men came face to face. It wasn't a quiet chat, it was a physical assault that sent the TV star flying. According to court reports, Janice Thomas claimed he saw red after Drew Pritchard smirked at him from across the pub. He took that smirk as a condescending, belittling gesture, a twisted sign of victory from the man who had an affair with his wife. In what was described as a fit of rage, Thomas lunged at Drew, swinging out with his left hand, and knocking him to the ground, sending his drink and glasses scattering. Other patrons had to jump in and pull Thomas off of Drew. The brawl was the brutal, physical result of years of secret betrayal and quiet rage. But as the details came out in Llandudno Magistrates' Court, the story got even more complex and sordid than a simple pub fight. Thomas's defense lawyer argued that his client had been subjected to extreme provocation. The court heard that the affair had happened 2 years earlier, but the emotional torment had continued long after it was over. The most damning part of the story came from a series of text messages. The court was told that after the affair between Drew and Amanda Thomas ended, Drew had contacted Amanda, allegedly warning her that their secret was about to come out. This was apparently followed by a wave of harassing messages that Amanda received from other women. These women were described as Drew Pritchard's other women, and they were blaming Amanda for the breakdown of their own relationships with the TV star. This painted a picture of Drew not as a man who made one mistake, but as a serial philanderer whose actions had created a toxic web of deceit. The provocation then became even more direct. After Amanda confessed the affair to her husband, the couple decided to work on their marriage for the sake of their children. But that peace didn't last. In April 2017, just 3 months before the pub fight, Drew allegedly sent a text to Amanda. The exact contents weren't released to the press, but its message was clear. It called Janice Thomas a coward. It was even claimed that Drew had started the fight by verbally taunting Janice, calling him a coward for not confronting him sooner. For Janice Thomas, this campaign of what his lawyer called tormenting was the final straw. That smirk in the pub wasn't an isolated incident, it was the culmination of months of goading and humiliation. The physical attack, while illegal, was presented in court as the reaction of a man pushed way past his breaking point. The story was no longer just about an affair, it was about alleged intimidation and a shocking lack of remorse. The fallout from the brawl was immediate and devastating. The story was splashed across national newspapers, turning a private humiliation into a public circus. The charismatic antique hunter was now the subject of scandalous headlines, his name tied to infidelity and violence. The carefully curated image he had spent decades building was shattered in an instant. The king of salvage had become the center of a salvageable wreck of his own making. The court case that followed the pub brawl was a public spectacle. When Janice Bryn Thomas appeared at Llandudno Magistrates' Court in October 2017, he arrived with his wife, Amanda, a clear signal that they were facing this as a united couple. Thomas pleaded guilty to common assault and threatening behavior. His defense laid out a case of extreme provocation, detailing the affair, the taunting texts, and the alleged harassment from Drew's other women. The prosecution, however, stuck to the facts of the assault. Drew Pritchard, who didn't attend the hearing, sent a statement describing the attack as vicious, claiming it left him with a sore head, a cut elbow, and pain in his jaw. He said the incident had made him wary of going out in his own town. In the end, the judge ruled against Thomas, but the legal penalty was pretty minor. He was ordered to pay a total of £1,440 in fines and court costs. Drew had asked for a restraining order against Thomas, but the magistrates didn't grant it, perhaps giving some weight to the provocation claims. Legally speaking, Drew Pritchard walked away clean. He was the victim of an assault, and the law had punished his attacker, but in the court of public opinion, and in the tight-knit community of Conwy, the verdict was completely different. The social fallout for Drew was far worse than any fine. The trial had laid bare the sordid details of his private life for everyone to see. He was publicly exposed as an adulterer who had betrayed not just his wife, but also a man who had been his friend. The revelation of multiple affairs turned his image from a flawed husband into something much more predatory. The public, who once admired his charm and expertise, now saw him through a lens of scandal and deceit. The humiliation was capped off by a uniquely local and deeply embarrassing punishment. In the wake of the incident, Drew Pritchard's name was put on the Conwy Pub Watch list. This scheme, used by local landlords to stop antisocial behavior, meant he was banned from every single pub and licensed establishment in his hometown. For a public figure, a celebrity in a small town, this was the ultimate social exile. He was a pariah in the very community where he'd built his life. The ban, which lasted for about a year, was a constant, public reminder of his disgrace. This social isolation was a crushing blow. His reputation, a currency as valuable as any antique, was trashed. Some people in the antiques community started to criticize him for what they saw as an elitist and abrasive attitude, a criticism that now seemed much more credible. The image of the lovable rogue, the charming treasure hunter, had been replaced by that of a man who got into pub brawls and was barred from his local watering holes. The scandal cast a long, dark shadow over his professional life, proving that no amount of fame could make you immune to the consequences of your actions. The law might have seen him as the victim, but in his own community, he was the villain of the story. The story is far from over. The public scandal was just the beginning of the collapse. If you're finding this story as shocking as we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the most heartbreaking part of this unraveling is still to come. While Drew Pritchard was facing public backlash, the deepest and most heartbreaking consequence of his actions was happening. Behind closed doors, the complete collapse of his marriage to Rebecca. Their partnership had been the foundation of the salvage hunters' empire for over 2 decades. They weren't just husband and wife, they were business partners, co-stars, and the parents of 2 kids. The scandal didn't just break a marriage, it fractured a family and threatened to take down a multi-million-dollar brand. For Rebecca, the humiliation must have been unbearable. The affair, the pub brawl, and the court case weren't private issues. They were front-page news. Her husband's infidelity was laid bare for the world to see, and by extension, so was her pain. As a recognizable face from a beloved TV show, she had to suffer through this deeply personal betrayal in the full glare of the public spotlight. Every headline was a fresh wound, every whisper in their small town a painful reminder. The divorce was finalized in 2017, the same year the scandal blew up. While the specific reasons weren't immediately public, the timing made it pretty clear that Drew's infidelity was the cause. The split was the end of an era for the show's fans, who had loved their partnership. The on-screen chemistry that viewers had cherished was now just a painful memory. The dream team had been torn apart by a secret that got too big to hide. What came next was a period of almost unimaginable professional awkwardness. Despite the divorce, Drew and Rebecca tried to keep working together on Salvage Hunters. For a while, she stayed on the show, analyzing his finds and discussing restoration projects with the man who had so publicly betrayed her. It's hard to imagine the strength it must have taken for Rebecca to stand in front of cameras and maintain a professional face while her world was falling apart. They were trying to co-parent their 2 children and co-manage a business, all while dealing with the raw wounds of a divorce. But that arrangement just wasn't built to last. The tension was reportedly huge. While they managed to separate business from their personal life for a time, the strain eventually became too much. Rebecca quietly stepped back from her main role. She eventually left the show entirely, moving to Chester to focus on her own antiques business and reclaim her life, away from the shadow of the scandal. The financial side of the divorce was also massive. Their shared assets, built over a lifetime of working together, were reportedly valued at around $8 million. The divorce settlement gave Rebecca a significant share of that fortune, a clear acknowledgement of her essential role in building their empire. But no amount of money could make up for the emotional damage. Drew himself later admitted the huge personal cost. In an interview, he talked about having a blip in the middle where everything just got too much for me. He described having to start his life over from scratch, both personally and professionally. The beautiful Methodist chapel they had shared for 21 years was sold. He moved into a smaller townhouse with his son, Tom, and started a period of deep reflection. He got rid of his collection of classic cars and, around 2021, he quit drinking completely. The collapse of his marriage was the emotional core of Drew Pritchard's downfall. It was a heartbreaking end to a partnership that had once looked so strong. The trust was gone, the family was shattered, and the professional dynamic that had captivated millions was gone forever. Rebecca Pritchard emerged from the wreckage with quiet dignity, a picture of strength who chose to rebuild her life on her own terms. Drew, on the other hand, was left to pick through the ruins of the life he had demolished. In the years since the public implosion of his private life, Drew Pritchard has been on a long, tough road to rebuild. The 2017 scandal didn't end his career, but it changed it forever. He continued as the face of Salvage Hunters, which shows just how popular the show was, but the charismatic, untouchable expert from the early seasons was gone. In his place was a more complex and controversial figure. The shadow of the scandal still lingers, a permanent part of his story. Professionally, he's faced new battles. In 2022, he closed his famous antiques showroom in Conwy, the physical heart of his business, shifting his operation mostly online. He then started a huge and deeply personal new project, restoring a historic, 5-story Georgian townhouse in Bath, which he bought for a reported £1.5 million. This journey was documented in the spin-off series, Salvage Hunters, Georgian House Restoration. But this dream project quickly turned into a financial nightmare. The restoration was hit with rising costs and unexpected problems. 10 months in, Drew had already blown through his £200,000 budget. After his credit cards were maxed out and a loan application was rejected, he had to make a painful choice: sell off his own personal collection of antiques, which he'd spent 30 years building, to fund the rest of the renovation. On the show, a stressed and sleepless Drew admitted the pressure was immense, saying, "I'm going to have to stop work completely on certain parts of the house. For now, there's nothing left in the wallet. It's empty." This public financial struggle was a huge departure from the Midas touch image he once had. Then, in April 2025, Drew made a stunning announcement that shocked his fans. After 14 years and 245 episodes, he was stepping back from Salvage Hunters. He assured viewers the show would continue with new dealers, but it was the definitive end of an era. He said he wanted to focus on his Bath restoration and his passion for classic cars, signaling a retreat from the TV spotlight that had both made him and broken him. On a personal level, Drew has tried to move forward. He has since remarried, though he's kept his new wife and their relationship mostly private. Some reports have identified her as Debbie Harris, a